12,000. Cobb hated the downtown. He hated the little busybodies with a sense of mission. He hated the suits, the skirts, the haircuts, the hair colors, the ties, the sidewalk conversations. He had not been in a city for a couple of years. It was overwhelming. He walked into one of the large, shiny buildings, one of the big cocks they put into their world. A large erection to remind them they weren't supposed to think about fucking everything that moved, weren't supposed to think about jamming their throbbing hard cocks into every moist, wet place that moaned and begged. Cobb had not forgotten to fuck everything that moved. It was a part of his mission. There was sperm in his body. That sperm was part of his overall consciousness, part of his overall person. In fact, Cobb had thought about almost nothing else since he'd been released from prison. He went up the elevator to the 22nd floor, into the office of Alexander Campbell, QC, which he knew to mean Queen's Counsel. What a bullshit expression, he thought, for the half second it took him to open, almost unhinge, the large wood door. What the fuck had the Queen done for him? What the hell did he care for some German bloodline living in the lap of luxury on the island of the Britons? They were no better than the French, the Jesuits, the Dutch, or any of the other bastards who had wandered the world in wooden boats, pushed by the wind. How could the Creator have given them wind and pushed into the lives of others? Catherine Campbell worked the reception. It was a family operation. She almost jumped out of her seat when she saw Cobb. Most people did. Cobb looked like he meant business. He was business. "Randall Seymour," he said. "You have an appointment?" "No. I just thought I'd drop in and say hello." "Are you being sarcastic?" "No." "You really just dropped in to say hello?" "Yep." "Are you here to see Alexander or Craig?" "Who is Craig?" "Oh, he's my brother. He passed the bar last year and he's working for my father now." "I didn't know the Queen had so many Scots in her council." "Excuse me? Did you fart?" "I beg your pardon?" "Why did you excuse yourself?" Catherine was bewildered. Cobb had a bewildering energy when he was practicing mischief, which was most of the time. She decided she wanted to extricate herself from this as quickly as possible. "I'll get my father." "That might be a good idea." She tapped the speakerphone, so as not to appear secretive or rude, Cobb suspected. "Yes?" came the deep voice from the other end. "There's a Randall Seymour here to see you." "Send him in." She pointed down the hall and said, "Second door on your left." Cobb nodded, turned, and strode down the hall, and went into the second door on the left, closing it behind him. Alexander was behind his desk. He smiled and stood when Cobb entered. "How are you, Randall?" "Not too bad." "Are you just out now?" "Yeah, a while now, a short while." Alexander gestured for him to take a seat. Cobb did and dropped into a large leather armchair, of which there were two in front of Alexander's large oak desk. Alexander Campbell, QC, was an immense man. He seemed to go out from the center like a beach ball. He didn't flab around like a flabby person. He was just stout, as wide as he was tall. No doubt the result of a diet that centered on beer and meat, Cobb reflected, and little or no exercise. "Why didn't you come and see me right away?" "I don't know." Alexander nodded his head and studied Cobb's blank face. "So what can I do for you?" Cobb caught his eyes and said, "I want to be a Freemason." "A Freemason?" "Yeah, a Freemason like you." Alexander was caught a little off guard. He didn't know whether to laugh. He didn't know what to do. So he just answered the question. "Well, how can I help with that?" "Let me hang out with you, take me to all the secret places, teach me the secret handshakes, and get me a seat on the Toronto Stock Exchange." "What?" "They say the Campbells murdered the MacDonalds in their sleep, and that's why your name is shit in Scotland." Alexander was beginning to become flustered. He didn't want to show blood in his face. He didn't want to show embarrassment, nor did he want to show anger. He had to be careful around Cobb. And so he continued to entertain the conversation. This was kind of the logical gymnastics he had been taught as a lawyer. "Randall, is this a joke?" "I don't know. Do you feel like laughing?" No, not really." "I guess it's serious then. If it wasn't, we both might feel pretty fucking uncomfortable right now." Alexander hung the words in his mind for a second, then burst out laughing. Oh, Jesus, you are insane, Randall. Randall didn't join in the laughter. He just stared at his lawyer. I don't know what's funnier, he said. That comment in and of itself, or the fact that you're giving free advice. Alexander noticed the shift in conversation back to the serious. There was little or no levity in Cobb. This was not going someplace good. Alexander tried to lighten the conversation. Who is your parole officer? I don't know. Some guy named Paddy in Parkdale. Oh, you haven't checked in yet? Nope. Well, Randall, I have to inform you, as your lawyer, you could land back in prison for that. Randall looked at him and said, it costs a lot of money to keep me in there. Plus, free advice from a lawyer is worthless. Alexander shook his head. It's all about the money then? Isn't it? And justice? Justice? What the fuck is that? Right and wrong. Cobb leaned into the desk and locked eyes with Alexander. Some tribes built longhouses and planted maize. Some raided the ones that planted maize because they hadn't made their own contract with the earth. You're just working for the tribe that raids, except you don't do it shooting arrows from underneath the galloping horse. You do it with math, accountants, actuaries, the illusion of authority. Randall, with God as my witness, I have not one clue what the hell you are talking about. It's nothing, I guess, Cobb said. Anyhow, the real reason I came by is to just say hello, let you know I'm out, see how you're doing, and say, no hard feelings. No hard feelings, Alexander repeated. You know, the overbilling. Overbilling, Alexander repeated again. I did the math in jail, and I figure you took me for about 12 grand. Well, that was enough for Alexander. He had entertained this nonsense long enough. Yes, he defended criminals in the city of Toronto, but nothing in his job necessitated that he receive people who were rude in his office. Randall, if that's why you came here, I think I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Okay, Randall said. I'll come by your house on Saturday and we can finish the conversation. Well, now Alexander looked truly, truly disturbed. My house? Yeah, Forest Hill Road, Forest Hill. I can come by the house. You know where I live? Don't you? Cobb said. And for the first time, something of a smile cracked the corner of his mouth, but it wasn't levity. He wasn't having a joke with his lawyer. Randall, I have to caution you. This all sounds a little threatening. Oh yeah? What part? Well, all of it, Randall. All of it. Coming into my office and demanding 12 grand. Whoa. What do you mean demanding? Whoa. What do you mean threatening? All I did was come here to talk to you about the bill. It was a 2-week trial. You charged me 48 grand. What's this horse shit you're talking about threatening? This is just a business conversation. Well, I mean your tone, Randall, your tone. Well, this is the same tone I always speak with. Okay, Randall, this is becoming exasperating. What exactly do you want? Jesus, Alexander, how many times do I have to repeat it? I already told you, 12 grand. All right, well, here we are, Alexander said. Here's my answer. You can't have it. Cobb sort of smirked, but it was hard to tell. In fact, his face was almost impossible to read. It's just a question of you giving it or me taking it. It's your decision, Alexander. Okay, so now it was back to a negotiation, which was Alexander Campbell QC's forte. He could negotiate. Here was his counter. Well, Randall, I don't have that kind of cash handy. My car is insured, and my bank card won't give more than $3,000 in a 24-hour period. Exactly how would you take it? Being the wise man that he is, Cobb acceded the ground immediately. All right, you got me. There's no way I can get 12 grand off you. So what I figured is I would skip the money system and take what the 12 grand meant to me and exact that price on you. Well, this was a dangerous turn in the conversation. Alexander had to be at the top of his game. And what is 12 grand worth to you? I'll go to your house in the dead of night when your fat ass is in bed, and I'll take your dog, then I'll eat your dog, and then I'll stuff him and mail him back to you. Well, that was the end of the conversation. Randall took the bait. He threatened his lawyer. Alexander now had cause to call the police, and he declared it immediately. I'm going to call the police now, Randall. Okay, Randall said, calmly. Randall sat there as still as stone and stared into the hazel eyes of his lawyer. Alexander picked up the phone. He dialed 911 and waited for the operator to announce her presence on the other end of the line. His breathing was labored, and he started to sweat at the brow. He glanced up from the phone. Randall was still staring right into his eyes. No blinking, no readable emotion. Alexander Campbell, QC, was a man who had learned how to read people. Blank people frightened him. He hung up the phone. Fuck, Randall, this is insane. I'm your lawyer. 12 grand. The negotiation was over. Cobb broke him by calling his bluff. He wasn't going to call the police. That kind of notoriety would go through the criminal underworld, and he would be less than desirable as a criminal lawyer. You sleep in the bed you make, he realized, and the Indian had him cornered. When, he said, 3 days, this bank account. Randall pushed a piece of paper across Alexander's desk. Put it all in there. If it's not there in 3 days, you'll never see me again, and you'll never know how or when or who or what, or any of the other questions that make charges stick. Alexander nodded his head slowly and like a penitent, like a man who had truly been beaten and wanted his adversary to know that. He responded simply with, "Okay." Randall stood and left the office. Alexander inhaled suddenly and deeply. Apparently, for several moments during the latter part of Randall's visit, Alexander had forgotten how to breathe. His brow was hot and moist, and he felt a bead of sweat run down his temple. Alexander Campbell, QC, had one dominant, unspoken thought in his consciousness. That dog-eater scares the shit out of me. End of chapter.